Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our wellness and booster session here on Tuesday, February 6th, and it's noon. So we're going to get started. First of all, I would just like to welcome you all here for the February edition of the Staff Wellness and Health Booster Sessions. And we are so excited today to present today's session on sleep and our mental health. So my name is Sherry Lissy Segerson, and I'm with Shared Health, Mental Health and Addictions, and I will be the moderator for today's session. The relationship between sleep hygiene and mental wellness is a cycle where poor sleep can exacerbate mental health symptoms, and mental health symptoms can prevent good sleep. So understanding sleep hygiene is an imperative part of maintaining mental wellness. So in today's presentation, we will be discussing how to make adjustments to improve sleep hygiene, the impacts of poor sleep, understanding your own status of wellness, and implementing the strategies to get a good night's sleep. So our presenter today is Cindy Kidrit, provider, engagement specialist, and program leader for the Addictions Management Program with the Employee Assistance Program at Manitoba Blue Cross. We were just talking about how maybe one of us or two of us might lose our voice this session, but I'll continue on. Before we get to the presentation, I just wanted to note that we will have a few minutes for questions once Cindy is finished. So if any questions come to mind during the presentation, please enter them into the question or chat section, and I can bring that up at the end of her presentation. And also today's session is being recorded and will be made available as streaming video on demand on the health provider's website under mental health and addictions. So with that, I will now turn it over to Cindy. So welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. I was wondering which of us was going to lose our voice first, so I'll hopefully be able to keep mine. All right, well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for this amazing opportunity. I was just sharing with Sherry that the last time I actually was able to do a booster session with Shared Health was, I think, almost 2 years ago. So I'm very excited to be back here and very excited to talk to you about sleep today, because I know that this is a very important concern for a lot of people. It's something that affects us on a day-to-day basis, and I'm a fairly new mom. I've got 2 kids under 3, so let's just say that sleep's not a luxury I typically have. So this is something I have to abide by myself. So before we jump into the presentation, I would just like to share a land acknowledgement with everyone here today. So I'd like to start with saying we acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral lands, Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, Dene peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge Northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and the intent of treaties and treaty making, and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Okay, well, Sherry did an awesome job introducing me, but just wanted to give you an introduction of myself. So I am the Provider Engagement Specialist at Manitoba Blue Cross Employee Assistance. I've now been with Blue Cross for coming up 11 years, and I've kind of grown up with the program, starting all the way from being an intake worker to an actual counselor with the program, and now currently in a leadership role. So I've seen this program from a lot of lenses, and it's very near and dear to me. So again, very happy to be part of this and able to present to you all today. So I'm going to just start with a very simple fact. Sleep is challenging. The Awkward Yeti is one of my favorite cartoons, especially coming from a mental health lens and perspective. They really shed light on often the confusion between our heads and our hearts, and how they often don't jive with one another. So just thought I'd share this quick little cartoon with you all about sleep, because they do spend a lot of time and have a lot of different cartoons around sleep. So if you're ever interested, have a look. It's a great site, and you can actually purchase a comic book if you're ever interested. Okay, so quick and easy, we're going to go through a quick outline, the importance of sleep, how sleep-wake cycles work, tips for getting a better night's sleep, and the different exercises on stress reduction. And of course, I'm going to also talk about some resources to help you out as well too. So the importance of sleep. Well, first and foremost, sleep and physical wellness and mental wellness are all intertwined with one another. We can't have one that exists without the other. If you look back in ancient times, sleep deprivation was actually a torture tactic for a lot of people, simply because it does really impact the way that we function in our day-to-day lives. And so that's why sleep is really an important and a necessity when it comes to mental health, because we feel well when we're well rested. And when we're not well rested, we don't have the same energy and capacity to do what we would typically like to do in a day. And it impacts the way that we treat ourselves. It impacts the way that we treat others. It can have some really negative effects on our relationships and our functionality. So the importance of sleep is the fact that, the ripple effect in all the other aspects of our wellness and the way that we live our lives that gets impacted. Skimping on sleep interferes with our energy, as I mentioned, productivity, creativity, problem-solving ability, and the ability to focus. When we are more rested, we are better equipped to handle our day-to-day tasks and better to interact with other people. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about the sleep-wake cycle, because basically what that means is our pattern of sleeping is rhythmic. It depends on each person. It depends on our bodies, our functionality. I'm sure there's some of you out there right now that, manage on 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night, and some who need 8 to 10 hours of sleep at night. Neither are wrong. Everyone has a different amount, simply because it just depends on who we are and how we function. Research shows that men actually need less sleep than women. Women need more, simply because we have a lot of different hormonal impacts on our bodies. And so naturally we have to sleep longer to keep repairing the body day in, day out. So I'm going to give you a couple quick quick tips around how we can maintain our sleep-wake cycle day to day. So first of all, pretty simple, go to sleep and get up at the exact same time every day. And this includes weekends as well too. I know often, and I'm guilty of this too, everyone likes to sleep in on the weekends for an hour or two. I remember my younger days, sometimes sleeping until noon when I was a university student, but not realizing at the time how badly that was actually impacting my cycle, because when I slept in, or if I napped during the day for longer than 15-20 minutes, then I would find that I would have a harder time falling asleep at night. So then I would fall asleep later, then wake up later, and then my whole sleep cycle was shifting. A lot of individuals that work shift work will probably find this also problematic and definitely challenging as well too. So that's why sometimes when we have breaks in between our shifts, it's really important to try and reevaluate that sleep cycle and manage it to get it back onto a better loop. After dinner, if you ever get sleepy, it's really good to try and stimulate yourself. Now, you don't want to overstimulate yourself after dinner, because you do want to eventually get to sleep, but you do want to do something that kind of gets the blood moving very gradually, so that you don't feel like you want to go to bed too early. This can also impact people after lunch hours if you have a heavier lunch as well too, so something to keep in mind. So what are some things that we can do to get a better night's sleep? So to improve your sleep, it's actually very important for us to improve our day-to-day activities. So when you have a good routine during the day and at night, and if you keep that routine as consistent as possible, that in and of itself can help maintain your sleep cycle. Again, aiming for 8 hours on average is a good amount of sleep, but take into consideration how you function. Again, some people do function with less sleep and still feel like they manage well, whereas some people do need a few more hours. So pay attention to what rhythm makes the most sense for you. You don't have to depend it on anyone else's cycles, just on your own. And to keep in sync with that natural sleep-wake cycle. So if you kind of have a gauge like, I tend to get drowsy closer to 9, maybe I start my bedtime routines around 8, so that I can make some time for the ways to wind down and eventually get myself to sleep. And on average, if you tend to wake up, like, let's say 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, these are good things to kind of pay attention to. A good way to track this is a sleep diary. So if you're trying to gauge what your sleep-wake cycle is like, keeping a sleep diary for about a week's time can give you some insight into what your general kind of sleep and wake up cycles are. Okay, so exercising during the day is one of the most profound ways of managing your sleep and getting a better night's sleep. Exercise during the day just simply allows blood to pump through the body, keep us awake at the times that we should be awake, but also exhausting certain amounts of energy, because sometimes when we're not working out during the day, or if we don't keep our bodies moving, we can get very stagnant. And then in turn, our bodies don't have that proper rhythm to help us eventually wind down at the end of the night. So any kind of exercise, and this could look like anything. More and more people are getting sit-stand desks if they work in an office space, simply because then it allows you to stand up during the day, get your blood moving, get your legs moving around. Sometimes doing just simple squats in your office space if you're not in a job that allows you to walk or move around as much. More and more people are purchasing sort of a mini treadmill that they keep under their desk so they can kind of get some stimulation and movement. If you ever, have break times that are, even as little as 15 minutes, taking a quick walk around the building, or, just walking up and down the hallways. For me, I know that we have bathrooms on our top floor and our bottom floor, but I intentionally actually go and use the bathrooms on the bottom floor because it gets me out of my seat, it makes me use the stairs, and it keeps me moving throughout the day. Exposure to light. Oh, actually, I realized I forgot to change the slide. Sorry, folks. One thing when it comes to exercise, a big piece of that is just remembering what time of the day that you're exercising as well too. If you, do tend to work out, go to the gym after work or during lunch hours, that's fantastic. You don't have to even have a vigorous workout. You don't have to work out for an hour or more. Sometimes even 15, 20 minutes is more than enough. The only thing to keep in mind with workouts, especially if you're going to be doing any kind of lifting or any cardio workout, is just making sure that you do it no more than 3 hours before bed. If you do kind of, work out within those 3 hours prior to bed, you can actually stimulate yourself too much to prevent yourself from falling asleep. Okay, so exposure to light. So melatonin is a very natural hormone that we all express that does regulate light exposure in our bodies. So for example, when we were kids, maybe we went to bed and had night lights because we were afraid of the dark or afraid of that monster under the bed. Having said that, while it did offer some comfort, sometimes that can actually impact sleep. So using lights that are either relatively dim or putting small night lights outside of the room so that at least you have very minimal light coming into the room is very helpful. And also being very, mindful too of, what kind of screen time you're using closer to night as well too, because any screen time is also considered light that can stimulate the brain. So during the day, expose yourself to bright sunlight because your body really needs to learn the difference between what sunlight is and what nighttime is. Again, being a new mom, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this comes from sleep training a child, where you kind of learn how people need to learn how to sleep. And with babies, it's actually recommended that you black out the windows so they sleep in complete darkness and that you keep them in the light during the day. And so anytime they go to bed, you always have to create a very significantly dark environment. The reason for that is because the brain actually has to recognize the difference what light means and being awake is versus nighttime when it's dark and going to sleep. Now that can get a lot more challenging during the summer months when we have longer days and the sun doesn't go down as early. Having said that though, there's a lot of things we can do to kind of prepare a sleep environment, which I will get into in a moment. For individuals, again, during the day where we have days like today, a little more gloomy, not a lot of light coming through, especially those winter months, using a light therapy box or using, they call them happy lights, can also be helpful to get a lot more vitamin D in your system and also get more melatonin in your system. As I said, at night, you want to avoid any kind of screen time as much as possible. If you do have to be on your phone, there's a way to actually dim the screen so that you're not getting stimulated by it. Late night TV, I know we're all, we've got our binge-worthy shows and all guilty of doing this from time to time, but avoiding that as much as possible is definitely helpful. Not reading with backlit devices. When it's time to sleep, making sure your room is as dark as possible. And then just keeping the lights down later and later into the evening. Sometimes, if you're after dinner and you don't need as many lights on, even just dimming the lights or turning off the ones you don't need to kind of prepare your body for falling asleep. Food and drink. Food and drink also have a very direct impact on the way that we sleep and the way we function. So limiting your caffeine or nicotine use closer to bed, avoiding big meals at night can also be a good way, because when you're feeling really heavy or bloated before you go to sleep, it's a lot harder to stimulate sleep. And then avoiding alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. It can make you feel more drowsy. However, it does impact the sleep cycle because you can get it more regularly if you're intoxicated. I included a little picture here, but the sleepy time tea is something that I used to recommend to university students because it would just kind of help, again, get the body in more of a sleep mode closer to bedtime. Drinking water. I mean, drinking water is really helpful, or any kind of liquid, but it is important to reduce the amount you do before bed, because if your bladder's too full and it wakes you up at night to go to the bathroom, then it disrupts your sleep cycle. And then, as we know, again, we're all guilty of this, but we love our sugary foods. And it's not saying that you can't have them, just simply managing it so that you're not having them so close to bed. Apologies, there we go. So when you need to wind down at the end of the night, doing whatever you can to kind of, again, reduce stimulation is helpful. For those who struggle with anxiety, I'm one of those people. I tend to really turn my brain on the most when I'm going to bed. So I really have to make sure that I do things actively to kind of bring the anxiety down so that I'm not thinking about things or getting stimulated. If any kind of stress is impacting you, doing things to kind of help reduce stress closer to bed, keeping your brain as minimally stimulated as possible so that your body actually feel like your brain can turn off. So how do we relax? I mean, everyone's got different ways that we can relax. Everyone has different things that help them relax. No two people are going to necessarily have the same thing. So here are just a few tips or a few ideas of things that help you relax. Just because something that you already do isn't on this list doesn't mean that it's not helpful, as long as, again, it's leading to relaxation versus stimulation. So for some people, reading a book or a magazine. Now, for some people, reading can actually be stimulating, so this may not be helpful. So just keep in mind that it's something that you feel actually brings down stress for you. Taking a warm bath, any kind of warmth can be very helpful. For some people, even just changing into very warm or comfy pajamas can also be a helpful way of winding down. Listening to soft music, so music without lyrics is often helpful because lyrics can also be very stimulating. So any sort of classical music or lyricless music is helpful. Easy stretches for those who do yoga or just some general stretching before bed. That just, again, helps the body pull tension out of it so that you can feel more relaxed. If you've got a favorite hobby, I'm a big collagist. I like collaging at night simply because it kind of just helps my brain wander and kind of leave the stresses behind. So if there's something that you do that allows you to do that, some people like to crochet or knit or other things that kind of help them feel like they can kind of take their mind off of things. Listening to an audio book or podcast, just making sure if it's got a screen that you have it face down or turned off. And just simple preparations for the next day too. If you have a lot that you have to prepare for the day, start early so you're not doing it too close to bedtime. And again, dimming the lights. Earlier, I mentioned sleep environment. That is a big factor when it comes to being able to fall asleep. For some people who are very sensitive to light and it wakes them up, you really need to pay attention to that. And even blacking out your windows with a garbage bag closer to nighttime can be helpful to kind of keep your room dark and easier to fall asleep. Keep your room quiet. If you are someone who does like background noise or that does help you relax at night, use a fan or a sound machine, or you can use earplugs. Keep your room cool. For me, who runs cold all the time, I'm not a big fan of having a cold room. Having said that, it does physically stimulate sleep. So keeping the room within an 18 degrees Celsius temperature is normal. If you do get cold, just layer up with some blankets. And make sure your bed is comfortable, of course. You want to make sure that you have enough covers, you turn them over comfortably, that you've got a very comfortable pillow that you can sleep on. And a big thing, make your bedroom space or your bed or room a place where sleep and intimacy are the only things that you focus on in there. It's even suggested for children that playing in the bedroom is not helpful because the brain actually associates fun or pleasure in the room, that they have a hard time getting to a sleepy mode that way. It's the exact same thing for adults. So use the bed for sleeping or sex only. Another one of my favorite Yeti cartoons here. Getting back to sleep. We're all guilty of being someone who does wake up periodically throughout the night. It can happen, especially, again, if you've got small children or if you've got animals at home that wake up in the night and wakes you up, and it can be hard to get back to sleep. So a big thing is staying out of your head. Now, that's significantly easier to say than to do, but trying not to let your brain kind of wander away from falling asleep is important. You don't want to think about all the things that I have to do the next day. If you find that your brain starts to wander, trying to bring it back as much as possible. A good way to do that is keeping what I like to call a dumping journal, something near your bedside, so that if you have thoughts or ideas or things that you're like, oh, I still have to do this, or I have to remember to do that tomorrow, just jot it down so that at least you're not worrying about whether or not you're going to remember it the next day. Make relaxation the goal. Even though it's not a replacement for sleep, any kind of relaxation is what's going to help your body actually feel better and feel rested. If you need to wind down again, that's not a problem, but you don't want to wake up and completely wake yourself up. Especially if you've only been awake for about 15 minutes. So doing something very quiet, non-stimulating, listening to music, or even if you do get out of bed, just some light stretching or relaxation. And I'm going to give you a few more tips in a moment of some other kind of exercises you can use. And again, postponing the worrying and the brainstorming. Again, if you're feeling anxious or if your mind's wandering, find somewhere to put those thoughts in the meantime, because you can always come back to them. All right, so I'm going to go through a few different exercises that are going to help reduce stress, that's going to help you sleep better at night. Now, I'm sure everyone has done or heard of or done some sort of training or learning around deep breathing. Deep breathing, as much as it seems like a very simple task, can be so helpful to the body, because what happens is when we are breathing throughout the day, we often don't take in nearly enough oxygen to help the brain process anything that we're doing. So when we do deep or slow breathing, what it is, it's very intentional. It allows more oxygen to actually enter the body and helps the brain actually utilize that oxygen. When the brain is oxygen deprived, it actually causes us to feel overwhelmed. It causes us to feel stressed out. We lose focus, and we have a much harder time managing our day-to-day tasks. So when you do a deep breath, you can keep your eyes open or you can close them, whatever seems the easiest to you. I find closing my eyes actually just keeps the stimulation to a minimum. Breathe through your nose. You can have a hand on your stomach or on your chest. You want to make sure that your shoulders stay down and that they're not lifting. Otherwise, you're not taking air in the abdomen, you're taking it in the chest area, and that's not going to be helpful. So having your hands on your abdomen actually allows you to take the air into the diaphragm. If you want to hold the air for a few seconds, that's definitely helpful. You don't have to hold it more than 5 seconds. So you take that deep breath in, hold for 5 seconds, and then blow everything out through your mouth. Again, this allows some tension to build when you hold the breath in, and then allows that tension to release as you exhale. Even doing this 10 times can be very helpful, and you can do it before bed, you can do it while you're in bed, and if you do wake at night, you can do it to help you relax and fall asleep again. Some of you may have heard of progressive muscle relaxation. So what that is the way of, stimulating muscles, and you can use any kind of muscle, it doesn't matter. You can start from your toes, going up to your head. A simple one that I teach for individuals who are interested in is actually using your hands and your fists. So holding your hand out, making a fist as tight as possible, holding for about 10 seconds, and then releasing. What that does is it actually causes blood to pool into the veins, and it can actually cause some tension to build. When that tension builds and then it is released, it actually causes relaxation in the muscles. You can do that as you see on the background of the screen. This woman is doing it with her head. So even with your neck side to side, if you find you hold tension in your body, holding it for a couple seconds and then releasing. Often pairing this with a body scan, which I'm going to teach you in a moment, can be helpful to find where you hold your stress. If you're someone who works in a desk job, you're going to probably find that your neck, shoulders, or even your jaw is where you're going to find the most tension. Simply because from when you're sitting for a long period of time, your body gets very tense, but it has to hold that tension somewhere. So those can be very common places. So I guess focusing your progressive muscle relaxation in those places is a good place to start. So a body scan. So a body scan can be done lying down, it can be sitting up, just paying attention to where you feel stress or tension in the body. Again, you can close your eyes when you do this activity. You start from your toes and actually scan mentally all the areas of your body and pay attention to where you might feel pain or tension or any sort of discomfort. Again, this can be paired really well with the progressive muscle relaxation, because if there are certain parts of your body where you feel more tension, then it's important to focus the relaxation in those parts. You don't have to necessarily tense or move the muscles in any way when you do the scan. You just want to pay attention to whether the sensations you're feeling are good or bad. Mindfulness meditation is always a really great way to relax. It allows us to stay very present and bring ourselves to the current moment and not allow our minds to kind of fly away. There is an app called One Moment Meditation. It's a really easy app. I used to share this with university students all the time, because for someone who's never really done mindfulness meditation before, it can be a bit overwhelming or a bit cumbersome. And so it can be a lot to try and do. So with the One Moment Mindfulness application, all it is you actually just time yourself for 1 minute, focus on deep breathing, and then a bell goes off at the minute mark. It's just a simple way to kind of just get started on mindfulness. And anytime you find your mind wandering somewhere else, you just compassionately tell yourself, I'm bringing myself back to this moment, and then center yourself back where you are. Your mind's going to wander a lot when you first start this type of exercise, and that is perfectly okay. You will get there. It just takes some practice. And it's a nice thing you can do actually even in your office, but especially when you're winding down at night. And it's a good starting exercise. Any sort of rhythmic movement is really, really helpful. So that means anything that you do kind of repetitively. So some examples here are running, walking, swimming, dancing, rowing, climbing, because again, the actual action of it is rhythmic, and it's something you can do over and over and over again. This is something that you would do more so during the day to kind of help encourage exercise, but also to try and create some regulation and relaxation in the body. If you are going to do something like this before bed, a good and just very helpful technique is, if you're sitting up in bed, you can actually just sway side to side. It's also very rhythmic. It's not necessarily a physical exercise, but it's a way of actually causing some calm in the body and relaxation. Some people like to rock forward and backwards or side to side. It doesn't really matter. But even that can just be a simple way of creating some relaxation and helping the body help the body express sleep in your system. Visualization. So when we visualize, the whole purpose of this is to kind of find a space that helps us get to a place of calm. So it doesn't have to be anything specific, but if you just close your eyes and imagine a place that you find rest. For some people, it's sitting on a beach and just listening to the waves crashing, or it's for some people in a meadow and they're just lying down in lush grass. For some people, they have a specific place or a room that kind of helps them feel more restful or sleepy. It can be anything you want, and all you need to do is visualize yourself being in this place and remembering what sensations it brings. How calm does it make you feel? Even pointing out what you see in this space can be really helpful to take your mind to that. And then any kind of worry or stress that you have doesn't end up coming into mind because you're focusing on the place. So it's again mindfulness along with visualization, allowing you to stay present. And when you're done, you just simply open your eyes and come back to the present moment. If you ever zone out or find that you're, kind of losing yourself in it, that is perfectly normal and okay to do. Okay, so I want to leave you with some resources and things that can be very helpful for you in terms of practicing and implementing sleep exercises and wellness in your day-to-day. So first of all, I want to promote our Blue Cross Wellness platform. Some of you may have heard of it or visited or already using it, but I encourage you to check out the site that's here. And we've got numerous things that you can do. We actually have a self-assessment tool that you can use, and they also have different resources around sleep and how to manage sleep to help you out as well. MindBeacon is an ICBT program that we launched just last year. And what it is you fill out a survey or questionnaire around the things that you might be dealing with. So if it's anxiety, stress, and in this case, also sleep, you can actually get dedicated modules that are customized to you to kind of practice different things to reduce stress in order to implement sleep at night. So this is a really good exercise and something that you can do at your own pace, or you can take it through a guided route where a clinician will actually walk you through the materials as well. A really good resource is the Center for Clinical Interventions. It has a lot of resources on sleep and actually has like tip sheets that you can print out and put anywhere you want or share with others. So I highly recommend it because it's got a lot on sleep hygiene that you can use. Anxiety Canada also has a really good article around how to get a good night's sleep. So that's also one I would encourage you to check out. If you're someone who deals with any sort of sleep difficulties that are definitely more physical and require some doctor support or medical support, the Regional Health Authorities Psychology Services has clinicians that work with sleep disorders, as well as the Misericordia Hospital has the Sleep Disorder Center. So I would encourage you to talk with your general physician or nurse practitioner if you do feel like this is more of a physical issue, so that they can help assist you with the proper resources.
Amazing. Okay. That was so good. Really appreciate your time and your knowledge about this particular topic. I can tell that you're very passionate about that. So thank you for sharing your passion with us today, Cindy. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions from folks. Is there anything that you would like to share that you haven't had an opportunity to share yet, Cindy? Anything?
Yeah, you know what? There's when people are establishing sleep goals, it can be pretty overwhelming because it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So I really want to stress with people that it's because it's a thing that's going to take some time, to be really patient with yourself. So first and foremost, start with a very small goal and then gradually kind of build up to it. Because I think that sometimes people just think, I'm going to do all these wonderful things and I'm going to put everything into play right off the hop, and then I'm going to have the best sleep of my life after this, and find that they don't. And it's simply because the body has to regulate itself. I kind of compare it sometimes to people who have a dependency on a behavior or even a substance. The body needs to gradually teach itself to live without things when you remove those things out of the day-to-day. The same way you're teaching your body how to sleep better, so you need to actually give it time to learn these methods. So you got to start with something simple. So of all the things I share with you today, choose one thing that you want to implement. Then the following week, add another, and then another after that. Because again, you want to give your body some time, be compassionate with it, because it is relearning the skill. It's something that we should all know how to do because it's kind of built in. Having said that, though, when we're busy and, I in this line of work, I know with Shared Health, like, you guys are constantly on the run, always looking after other people. So it's that much more important to look after yourself, because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep looking after everyone else. And there goes my voice.
Yeah, and I just need a little bit of water too. So we do have a couple of questions. So what was the name of the meditation app again?
Oh, yes, sorry. I'm just gonna grab it off my phone. I just make sure I got the name. One Moment Meditation. Sorry, I might have said mindfulness in there, so I apologize. It's One Moment Meditation. Perfect. Super quick and easy. I'm gonna see if actually my phone you can. Oh, where's my camera? There it is. So it's got a little guy here. It's super cute. And then it has a timer, so you can actually time yourself when you're doing it.
Great.
Yeah.
And another question as well, is it true that deep breathing is good before bed because we breathe slower when we sleep?
Yeah, well, because as you know, our heart rates slow down significantly when we're sleeping, when it gets into a restful state. So when we're breathing slowly, the brain, the lungs, and the heart are learning how to sync themselves. So you're actually
Mm,
physically training the body to slow down as it would when it's falling asleep. And
wow.
so when you're breathing, your lungs are actually expanding and slowing down. So it's actually triggering your heart to slow down at the same time. When we breathe faster, what happens is the heart's pumping harder to try and keep up with the lungs. And so it's
Right.
pumping more blood, but you're not getting enough oxygen. That's why there's not enough oxygen actually going into the brain. So you actually have to physically reverse the process and slow everything down. So when your mind when your lungs slow down, then it slows your heart from pumping as much blood so that you're actually slowing your brain down in the process.
Amazing. Do you have any advice for transitioning off sleep meds? That's a good question.
That is an excellent question. So I don't recommend doing that without the help of a practitioner of some kind. So whether it's your GP or whether it is your nurse practitioner or whoever it is that you're working with, it needs to be like any substance. You can go into withdrawal very quickly if you try to remove it out of the system too quickly. And that's simply because the body gets used to it being there and it relies heavily on it. And then when you remove it, all of a sudden the body can actually go into a bit of a shock because it doesn't know what to do without it. So very gradual, usually dropping your dose gradually from week to week, or again, with the advice of your physician, I would recommend. Just my biggest advice is do not stop it cold turkey under any circumstances because the body doesn't know how to react to that properly.
And there's also a comment here as well. The app Rooted, spelled ROOT', is really
Okay.
good for anxiety and it's made in Canada. And another good meditation app is Breathe. So that was
Oh,
just
yes,
a
I've heard of Breathe. Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
but I will look up Rooted. That's actually
yeah.
really good to know. So thank you.
Is the PowerPoint being shared? If not, can the recommended links please be shared? So this is recorded and we will be posting it to our site. And so you can always, go into the archives and fast forward, to the 35-minute mark and you should be able to find that. The name of the cartoon that you had shown, Awkward Yeti, check, I can answer that one. Um, Thanks so much for the great info. Were there, sorry.
That's okay.
Thanks so much for the great info. Were there any comments on healthy, not healthy use of sleep tracking apps?
That's a very good question. I think that any kind of app to help track it, and like I've got a Fitbit here, so I am a big advocate for tracking. I think the only thing that I recommend for people is to not live by them. Any kind of tracking can become obsessive in nature, and that isn't helpful. So you want to be just be very compassionate. Use it as a regulatory device, just keeping track of how you're doing. So like I said earlier, people who have a sleep journal, sometimes they use an app to track it instead, and it can be very helpful. But just remembering that these devices or these apps aren't always going to be accurate, so you want to take everything that it shares with you with a grain of salt. But yes, I think that they can be really helpful. I think they can only be damaging when people get kind of almost too obsessed with using them
Mhm.
and trying to keep themselves accountable to it, because even that can end up being harmful to you because you're stressing yourself out trying to keep up with it when in fact it's not reasonable.
And there's a comment. Cindy, can you go back to the previous slide with all the links?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
hang
we're
on.
just going to, yep, for sure. And we're going to do one last question, I think, and then I think we're going to wrap it up. So we'll leave that on there. There you go. The last question is it true that blue light is the worst type of light for us and that night lights are better being a color like red or orange?
Yes, so blue light is actually, now I'm not a science person when it comes to lights and the physics of all of it. What I do know though is blue lights actually trigger certain neurons in the brain, whereas the softer lights don't necessarily trigger the same neurons. So that's the reason why the difference in light can be very significant. If you know, like a lot more people are going to more natural light, and it's because
Mhm.
fluorescence lights, when it flickers, actually triggers you
Yeah.
even more. A lot of people speak to having, I don't even keep fluorescence lights on in my office. I use lamp light because it is a lot more duller. Having said that, though, like I actually can get headaches because when that flickering happens, even if it's subtle, it can actually cause a lot of impairment. So,
Mhm.
and with night lights, I would recommend not colored lights only because again even the change in color turns the brain on.
Right.
So I recommend using a simple like low light, just something that doesn't change or anything. I know with kids they like the fun colors changing, but that can actually wake kids up or wake adults up when the colors changing, because as you can see, like when you close your eyes, if colors change in front of you, you can still see the color changing in your
Mhm.
lids. So even when your eyes are closed, you can't block that out. So it's really important to use something that's not going to trigger too much.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you again to everyone for joining us today, and to Cindy for her terrific presentation. So we are currently in the planning stages for our March session, and we'll share those details through our usual channels and also on our page on the health providers website. So again, thank you to Cindy for your presentation, and thank you everybody for attending. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. Get a good sleep tonight. Okay.
Take care. Yes.
Thank you. Bye for now.